Hello, people. Welcome to the SpaceChem Tournament 2020 Round 3A video. Today I've got Brookie
Hello.
and I've got Zig with me.
Hi.
I'm Rexkix. Um, Before we go anywhere, I want to say thank you to the tournament host. RP0 did all the puzzles, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 IEEE, he did all the number crunching and just does everything else for the tournament. It's very helpful.
And has been juggling this community edition stuff too.
Yes.
With the 64-bit update.
Yes, he's been really helpful. I know both of them would rather be playing in the tournament rather than running it, but they do that so we can have fun. And thank you guys very much.
Yeah, thanks.
But first, let's talk about the puzzle. Here we go.
Right. So week 3A is about making dichloroethane, which is C2H2Cl2, and a explosive precursor, H2N2O2, from fulminic acid and hydrochloric acid. A few things to note. There's a barrier in the middle of the reactor, which forces you to transport the atoms via quantum tunnels from one side to the other. Otherwise, this puzzle would be far too easy. In terms of area output, there's two ways you can approach balancing. You can either split it, each input molecule right down the middle, and put half of them into the explosive precursor and half of it into dichloromethane, or you could do like a 3/4 to 1/4 split on the top, where you have HNO going into the explosive precursor, and you have the carbon plus the hydrochloric acid go into the dichloromethane. Other things to know about this puzzle is that sinks here we count as adding 10 cycles to your score. So what does this mean? Well, it means that you are actually discouraged to use sinks. There are times where it might seem like you're forced to use a sink. For example, if you have a rotate command on only one of your two Waldos, you'll have them delayed by one cycle. Well, to get back to the same cycles, there's two ways of doing it. One is you put a flip-flop against the wall. This will stall the Waldo for exactly one cycle, and it will restore parity, aka it'll return both Waldos to be either both even or both odd. The other way is to have another rotate, either in your first Waldo or the other Waldo, which will also, again, make them both even or odd, instead of using sinks.
Mm-hmm. Actually, there's technically a third way, which is if you were to do double input beta and swap it away in the same cycle that it comes out, or like this, if they both call input beta, it doesn't actually crash. Red will output first, blue will wait on it as if it was a production pipe.
Yeah.
And if red were to swap right after, it would be fine. But that's a very edge case and very hard to implement.
There's also one thing I didn't mention is you can also use some weird things like stalling against the wall using a sensor command. That can also cause it to wait for an odd number of cycles and restore parity.
But yeah, for the most part, the reasoning behind not wanting sinks is because sinks just generally make a solution prone to all sorts of little timing issues that will slow it down or make it more messy or just increase the symbol count because of the number of sinks. And often they're just not necessary.
And the machine looks so much better when it doesn't ever stop moving. It just keeps moving and moving.
Yeah.
There is one more way to get yourself back on, get parity back, is to have an output that delays, that tries to output two things and doesn't, or that does, and that will make it go back
That's right.
in cycle.
You can do something weird where you drop two things in the output zone, and even if one of them is wrong, if you grab it before it goes out, it'll have already delayed the first Waldo. Something like that.
Anyhow, let's go take a look at the solutions. First solution is by darkid. Let's go take a look at this.
So darkid, a running theme with this puzzle is going to be where you decide to put your swappers, and darkid chose to do 2 over the input zones and 2 over the output zones. So this means that he'll need to be a bit careful about how he handles his inputs because he has only 2 swappers to work with, but the output swappers will mean he can grab them from multiple locations, which is a bit convenient for constructing the outputs. That said, darkid chose to do a construction method which is a little bit awkward with a lot of drops. There's no moving and bonding while constructing, so he just has blue go down and put every atom exactly where it needs to be, which makes it somewhat simple to understand how it works, but it's a bit awkward to rearrange the paths to get in there.
Right.
So you can see here it creates the O and O stick first.
So darkid's solution has red feeding the alpha input atom by atom into a swapper for blue, while blue constructs the explosive precursor, which he just outputted. Then red and blue will actually swap roles, where blue will now feed in the HCl, while red constructs the dichloromethane with the 2 carbons left over by blue. Now, this ends up being kind of slow, mostly because if you take a look at what each Waldo is doing, it's almost all the time that one of them is waiting on a sync for the other.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see that in future solutions that many of the better running solutions actually will have both Waldos working pretty much full time.
Yeah, there's usually ways to take advantage of any downtime you have on one Waldo. But yeah, there's red's input loop is nice and compact, which is clean to look at for feeding the inputs in, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Blue's got a hell of a flip-flop array. I'm not going to pretend that I understand what's going on there, but it looks like it's counting to 8 or 6 or so. Probably 6.
Yeah, let's see here.
Okay. I like the way blue uses flip-flops to position every single atom one at a time.
Yeah, get into every little slot, yeah.
Anyhow, let's read this a little faster. And this clocks in at 2867 cycles. He used 125 symbols to do it, but that's not important. This got him, with his 5 syncs, got him a metric of 2917, and got him a score of 1.659. And now we got Astronelson's solution at 24th place. Let's go take a look at it.
Right. So in Astronelson's solution, red inputs alphas and has a huge swap and sync chain to determine what atom blue actually ends up picking up. Blue will later input HCl and does all of the construction. Kind of similar to darkid's solution, the main problem with this is that there's a lot of waiting around that's done by red, that where red isn't actually doing very much, whereas blue is taking care of pretty much everything else.
Yeah, red is almost exclusively running a timing loop and has like one grab over the input zone to help, but apart from that is just making sure the swaps are exactly at the right times. Blue has a heck of a job here.
Yeah, blue does all the assembly. He uses 3 swappers in the blue in the alpha input zone, and just the 1 swapper in the output zone right here. And let's let this run a little faster.
And it's worth noting that it's good use of the 2 sensors made it easier for him to sort out the timing on each of the 2 halves of the construction job. The carbon sensor and the oxygen sensor.
Here's his carbon sensor, and there's the oxygen sensor. And this makes Astronelson's solution run at 2281 cycles, but he had a whopping 16 sync instructions. That gave him a metric of 2441. Compared to darkid's 2917, this gives Astronelson a score of 2.066.
So this is CursedFlames' solution. So CursedFlames has a bit of an interesting output construction method with, I believe he handles the outputs sort of asymmetrically. Let's see how he does it. So blue is going to be constructing the omega output and is after some amount of shuffling the inputs over to the swappers, is going to do one stick that is O-N-O, and then handles the H and H separate differently with the kind of triangle shape there. Whereas the top output is done in a manner that is going to be seen a lot more with other solutions, which is two sticks. Actually, sorry, the top output is built with building the spine of carbon first, and then attaches the two sides to it, which is also seen in some other solutions, I believe.
Right. So by now you might have seen a running theme in these solutions, which is that we're going to see a lot of swappers being placed over the alpha and beta inputs. So the problem with CursedFlames solution is that there's sadly still a lot of time taken, where blue and red each have to come over to process atoms on a swapper over the beta input. We'll see that many of the top solutions actually place swappers over either most of one of the inputs or over the beta input completely, so that they don't actually have to touch the beta input area at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's also a bit slowed down by the somewhat awkward construction method on the omega output. It's a little asymmetrical and has to get into just the right part of the board. It
is curious that there's no sensor use in this solution, actually.
Oh yeah.
No.
I feel like there probably would have been a way to simplify some of the flip-flops by using sensors instead, but I'm not sure.
Anyhow, let's go run this a little faster. And that brings CursedFlames solution at 1476 cycles with his 9 sync commands. That brings him out to a metric of 1566 and earned him, let's just see, 3.257 points.
Right.
Okay.
So CursedFlames actually has quite a decent amount faster than the previous two solutions. I think mostly because the two Waldos are actually mostly moving most of the time.
Yeah, they have long travel paths, but they're at least doing some sort of work all the time, most of the time.
Next solution's by RP0. He's our tournament host. Yay! Thank you, RP0. Let's go take a look at his solution.
Right, so RP0 actually shows us that if you have a bunch of timing loops, you don't actually need syncs at all. For example, if you look at blue right there, it just went forwards and doubled back on an arrow. Also, the corner, the bottom left corner for red also has this weird, area where it goes out to the left corner and then comes back and doesn't seem to do anything at all. All of these things are timing loops. So they delay the Waldo in question for a specified number of cycles while it's waiting for the other Waldo to get to a specific position without using syncs. Of course, if you wanted to, make the Waldo path more elegant, then you definitely would use syncs. But we're trying to avoid that.
If you had problems with space, syncs are definitely the way to go. But if you care about cycles or symbols, often they're not worth it. Now, also, RP0 ran us for a loop here when we were looking at this because we saw those bonders over the input zone. And we're like, he's doing some bonding on the inputs to make it easier. He doesn't use those bonders. He really just trying to trick us there.
Cheers for a loop there, RP0. Anyhow, let's go watch this run to completion. First, a little at 2 speed so we can watch it go a little better.
And he does the asymmetrical outputs too that the previous solution showed for the omega zone with that kind of 3-2-1 shape.
Some use of sensors will detect when to special case out an output.
Mm-hmm. And also another double swapper in each, 2 swappers in each output versus input zones.
Yeah.
Which allows the Waldos to double pump, which makes this faster than some of the previous solutions we've seen.
Here's our hydrogen sensor command. Here's our oxygen sensor command. And
Just gonna really quickly correct you on that. It's not technically a double pump, but both waddles are working.
double work, not double pump. But yeah, the output constructions are actually quite similar, almost mirrored, but not quite. Red does some kind of different pathing. But yeah, they look similar on the surface. The placement of the sensors, the placement of the bonders.
Okay, well, here runs to completion. RP0 did 1308 cycles and used no sinks, gave him a metric of 1308 cycles for. No points for the tournament host. I'm sorry, RP0.
Sorry, RP0.
Thank you, anyways. Thank you for a great puzzle. I certainly enjoyed it. Okay, next solution's by Counterpoint. It looks like this.
All right, so Counterpoint is another. So from this point on, all the solutions are going to be using no sinks, like RP0 also did. And so this is going to be the first sub 1000 cycle solution, and that's because it has reasonably efficient loops in the output zones. It's got some 4 and 6 cycle loops at its core, and then a little bit of extra handling around those. Where it loses a lot of time is that the Walders are traveling between all of the different zones, doing the different jobs. Each one of them visits all 4 zones, and so they have a lot of downtime while they're traveling around. Just getting where they need to be takes a bit of time, so they're not always swapping and constructing.
Right. One rather interesting thing that you might notice is that there's a bunch of flip-flops in the corner, the lower right corner for blue.
Yeah, what's blue doing there?
That is straight up
timing.
That's actually a timing loop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas
stalling on flip-flops.
Yeah, the top flip-flop will hold blue there for a cycle. The bottom flip-flop does the same, and when it comes back up, the middle flip-flop moves it over. It looks funky, but yeah, sometimes you can just do things like that.
So, also worth noting that this solution is one of the first to use one of the more clean ways of constructing the output, which is to build 3 sticks, as you see blue doing right now, and then attach them together in the middle. And so that means that you're doing the same job for both halves of the stick, and it's quite symmetrical, which means you save a lot of space and can do small, efficient loops.
Okay.
And so we're going to see a lot of solutions in the future using this approach. So
let's let it run.
Nice to see her.
Letting it run to completion. Counterpoint gets 939 cycles for a score of 5.404, giving him a healthy jump over CursedFlames solution, which got 3.257 points. Very nice jump there, Counterpoint. Next solution's by rezoons at 21st place. Here it is.
Right, so rezoons actually has the first of what we call the double input alpha solutions. Essentially, with bonders over the alpha input, you can actually input two of the fulminic acids at a time, and this actually allows you to build the explosive precursor a lot more cleanly because you can get your first 2 nitrogens right off the bat. In fact, you already have everything you need to make a whole explosive precursor because the remaining carbons can be just combined with the hydrochloric acids to make the dichloroethane. So we actually will see this method again in some future solutions. It is kind of interesting to note that there are that the double input alpha saves time because you only need to go over to the input zone once per every output instead of twice if you made your outputs one alpha input at a time.
Yeah, and as you said, you don't have to spend a lot of time. Like if you just shove all of an alpha input into the swappers, you have to spend a lot of time cycling through maybe the carbon and the hydrogen you didn't need for the explosive precursor or the carbon.
Yeah.
Whereas here you just get your 2 nitrogens right away, then you get your 2 oxygens right away. So it's really, you don't have to worry about any excess atoms clogging the swappers.
One unfortunate thing about this solution, though, is there are a decent amount of timing loops. For example, red in the top left corner, I think, has like a big loop there where it's just waiting for blue to do something. And of course, at the bottom where red has a wall flip flop, it
Yeah, and it's also the long paths from the input zone to the output zone. You can see like blue has all these paths that are just empty as it travels over, and red has a lot of the same, which is that when you have to have both Waldos doing stuff in both input and output zones, you lose a lot of time to travel time.
Indeed.
And let's go see this go.
Okay. Yeah, I like how the outputs were constructed with the 2 atoms at a time method there, with 2 grabs and drops. It's very nice to look at.
Well, rezoons rezoons, by the way, was our winner last week 2.
That's right. Congrats again on that. Rezoons.
Yeah, that was really nice. That was our low symbol solution, was it not? Yes, it was. That was very impressive. This week he got 920 cycles for 5.594 points, giving him 21st place. Next solution's by Csaboka. He got 20th place with this solution. Before we even go on, Csaboka is one of the 2 developers with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 IEEE of the Community Edition. Without the Community Edition, this tournament wouldn't be going on. We all love the additional features of the Community Edition, like extra solutions. Whenever I help anyone get the game, I tell them you must get the Community Edition. The Community Edition rocks. Thank you very much, Csaboka.
I don't know how I'd be playing this tournament without the save files now. I don't know how I ever played SpaceChem without the extra save files. It's amazing. And yeah, all these new features that are being used in the tournament puzzles, like extra sensors, extra swappers, is really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nice. So yeah, thank you, Csaboka, for expanding along these horizons.
Yeah, and IEEE. Mm-hmm.
Anyhow,
so
go ahead.
Let's look at a solution. Yeah. So this is, I think, is this the first solution that does a single swapper in the output zone?
Yeah.
I believe so. So yeah, Csaboka uses 3 swappers in the input zone, which makes you can see that the input zone handling is very simple and clean. They only have to do a couple of grab drops to feed things in. In the output zone, meanwhile, he's using I believe the same sticks method of building the outputs. So he builds up a hydrogen, carbon, chlorine stick, and then same thing for the omega output, the ONO first, I believe. And then after that, just needs to attach the 2 sticks together. Oh, he's doing something a bit different here. He's making a triangle. So the top output is the more traditional approach with the 3 sticks, and that's already done. And I think he spends, that's right. I think he spends a bit more of his time, maybe more 2/3 of the construction time spent on the omega output zone. So it's a bit more complicated because of, I think the order the atoms come in maybe is a bit more awkward.
Yeah. So Csaboka puts half of he covers half of each input with the swappers, and this allows him to input, swap, and make half of his dichloroethane instantly. And then he just needs to move the inputs over and make half of his explosive precursor. The speed increase here comes from there's actually relatively minor detours needed for timing, but unfortunately the loops are still quite long. But because each Waldo is essentially working at all times, it ends up being pretty fast.
Yeah, especially the psi output construction is just like a 6 loop or so on red, something like that, plus a bunch of other stuff. But yeah, the omega output is really, if you had found a better way to construct that, this would have been a lot faster.
Okay.
But yeah, the input zone handling is very clean, which is nice. And cleanliness is next to cycliness.
Yeah, well,
and godliness.
And godliness. Giving Csaboka a cycles of 901 cycles, and earned him 5.788 points for 20th place. Nice job. Next solution is my personal solution at 19th place. My solution took one swapper in both inputs, another swapper in both output zones, and I had blue make the first input the first output, the dichloroethane output, while red moved things away so we could bring them in again. Meanwhile, then blue, everything got filled up over here. So blue swaps over and lets red come over and do the building of the explosive precursor. This means that this just ends up looking like a mess. It's the best I could do. They both travel over each zone, and blue has this long path to go because I couldn't figure out how red could bring it back down. Red was all full up. And so blue goes down and does the output. And we'll watch that again.
Yeah, I think you're saving grace here. Why you're faster than the other solutions so far is you spend, the wall does each spend time only in the output zone and only in the input zone at first, and then swap over only once. So they don't spend too much time traveling between from left to right.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're fairly compact output zone construction here for each of them.
And the the red handoff over to blue for the last output in the Omega does shorten red's loop by a decent amount too.
Right here.
Yeah.
Well, I was looking for a way to make that sail straight across, and I just couldn't figure out how to do it, and I was left with this little flip-flop arrangement. Okay.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's because with only 2 swappers in the input zone was a bit more cluttered because you had to fit more commands in.
I was glad we had a week 3B because it gave me a chance to look at this kind of problem better. I think I came up with a much better solution there, but we'll have to wait for another video for that. Let's let this run to completion. I got 870 cycles, giving me 6.063 points for 19th place.
And maybe for some viewers' context, there's going to be a 3B video after this because it was decided that round 3 was maybe a bit harder than the tournament that RP0 intended for such an early round. So 3B was meant to be a bit of an easier version of the similar idea puzzle.
Okay,
so we'll see that in the next video.
Yeah. And that was my solution. Next solution is McCrush's solution at 18th place. Let's go take a look at it.
So McCrush, firstly, there's a lot of extra arrows in this solution.
Oh yeah. What's going on there? Bottom right. Where else did you see one?
There's one on the bottom right. There's one. There's one on the blue, on the left. Blue on the left, right on the input beta.
Gotta call them out.
Yeah. And there's another one somewhere. We'll have to go and take a look at it sometime later.
I think he managed to escape the tiebreaker, but tisk.
Anyway, so McCrush's solution has a blue. Oh, sorry. There's red flip flop on the right side.
This one?
Yes.
He doesn't actually need output loops.
Yeah, he doesn't need that or the arrow. That's the last extra arrow.
Right.
Oh no.
Or not that one.
Is it this one? Oh, of course.
It's the 1 2 squares that are right there.
It's got to be that one, yeah.
Yeah. So he didn't need that one, and he didn't need
this one and
the
this
one. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Pardon
us, McCrush.
But he wasn't looking to win any symbol fights anyway with 120 symbols, I think, here.
Anyhow, we've got
so this is the first sub 800 solution, I believe. Which it's about a big leap from the previous solution because he uses something a bit unique. Maybe we should let it run and show this is a unique construction method, or at least unique that we haven't seen so far. We'll see it in some future solutions. So a lot of previous solutions made 3 sticks and attached them together. Instead, here McCrush does a 4-stick and then just attaches the 2 extra atoms that are needed to the side of it.
Right.
So this means it can make a very nice, simple for loop for part of the output construction.
Right, so McCrush has a lot of speed advantage over the previous solutions because of how often he has a Waldo in a for loop, creating a for long stick. This ends up being pretty advantageous, actually. But
Yeah, that saves a lot of output
loop.
time.
There's another for
A lot of time is lost to handling the 2 extra atoms, but it does have its nice advantages in that a lot of the output is just really fast. And he also opted to do the swappers over the alpha input zone, which meant that while doing those 4 sticks, he didn't have to do too much input handling, I believe.
Yeah. Let's go watch it a little bit.
It's timed pretty well, actually. There's not too many delay loops. There is a slight delay between finishing the outputs and going back to the original start positions, but other than that,
yeah, it's mostly just those
it's pretty
2 extra
well
atoms that are slowing down the output construction. But we'll see a similar idea in the future. So we'll get to see a lot of ways of building this 4 stick and plus 2 atoms kind of idea.
Okay, well, and McCrush got 766 cycles, which is considerably better than my 870. For 6.902 points, beat me by nearly 0.9, almost a whole point. That's really good, McCrush. Nicely done there. Next solution is by lilkcough at 17th place. Let's go take a look at it.
Right, so lilkcough has a lot of fiddling around with bringing inputs from alpha and beta to fit right through his only swapper on the left side. There's
this is the first solution to do that with 3 in the output zone, 3 swappers in the output zone.
Right. There's some very interesting 3-count flip-flops in those loops. Yeah, with both red and blue having some 3-count loops. I'm actually kind of curious to see if those are savable or replaceable with sensors, because I don't think there's actually any sensors used in this solution. But yeah.
So his psi output construction is actually very fast because he just has that tight red loop that does most of the work. But the omega output construction is a lot more asymmetrical, and I think he spends like 2/3 of his output construction time there. So I think, this is a common theme. I think in a previous solution also spends a lot more time doing getting the omega output zone construction correct.
I personally
just
found
because I think.
I personally found the symmetry of the psi output to be easier to deal with than the omega output. But that's just
I think it depends on how you handle the inputs. Like you can just find yourself, depending on how you decide to put them into the swappers, it can just end up making one output a lot easier than the other, depending on the order they come in.
I note that there's a bonder priority thing that comes into play here.
Oh yeah, I haven't looked at what's happening there.
Right here.
That should be the same.
Yeah,
when that right there, when it bonds the
oxygen, not the nitrogen.
Yeah, I'm
you're looking at the top one.
The top one.
Oh.
The top one also has bonder priority. The 1 and 2 has to bond vertically first before it bonds to the right side, or else you'll crash the carbon into the hydrogen.
I see.
Well, here in the bottom,
I think that's a common theme later.
Bottom, he had all his bonds unmade here, unmade again there, and unmade again, and then they get bonded together just so. Let's see if we can watch that again. Actually, I guess basically, well, looked like bonder priority going off to me. Oh well. Let's go watch this go fast. And lilkcough comes in with 744 cycles for 17th place. Next solution is the 16th place solution by Flexo. Let's go take a look at it.
So Flexo uses a couple of ideas that we've seen already in previous solutions. There's the double bonding, or the bonding of 2 alpha inputs, and that allows for getting 2 of the same atom at a time into the swappers, and For example, that means that can use the same construction that McCrush used with a 4-stick and 2 extra atoms, and just get the 2 carbons in a row right away, which makes that very convenient. So yeah, this is a bit of it. We're going to start seeing from now on a lot more of hybridization of some way of handling the inputs with some way of handling the outputs, and there's a lot of different combinations you can try with that. But here also, Blue's layout is extremely compact in the output zone and doesn't have to waste any time like traveling towards the input zones, which is nice.
Right, so there's plenty of cycles needed for Blue and Red to manipulate the unwieldy inputs. The reuse of the Blue to make the 2 sticks, one for dichloroethane and another for the explosive precursor, is pretty clever. But unfortunately, so while Blue does have a really efficient for loop to make the sticks, there's a decent amount of time where Blue is actually just stuck in there, not picking
returning
up
back
anything,
to where it started. Yeah,
unfortunately,
and maybe waiting for Red to swap too. But
you can see it right here.
Yeah, that's because he has to run down to the Omega output zone to do the other construction, and then has to run all the way back upwards. And there actually is a bit of time loss there.
Yeah.
And also the usual culprits of those 2 atoms that you have to stick on the side of the for loop. Those are always a bit more awkward to handle. So here he has to do a little song and dance to attach them.
Other than that, Blue is pretty efficient.
Yeah, it's a very nice and compact layout overall. It uses only the output zone. Doesn't have to trek all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go.
You can see that Red definitely does have some timing loops in it, though. So that's just unfortunate.
Yeah, a little bit of extra rundown.
Processing the input takes a non-negligible amount of cycles.
And how many non-negligible non-cycles? 704 non-negligible cycles. 741. There we are. I can talk. Giving Flexo a score of 7.282 in 16th place. Next solution is anningmay at 15th place. This is anningmay's first tournament, and he's been really doing very well for that. Here we go. Let's go take a look at it.
Right. So when I first looked at this solution, my first thought is, wait, you're making dichloroethane on the wrong side of the reactor. As you can see, he actually ends up making what looks very similar to it, but not quite dichloroethane on the left side.
Over in the inputs.
But it ends up actually being pretty. He's got pretty good use of swappers over the inputs, and he has a very nice delivery with minimal reset time. So Blue makes the explosive precursor while Red makes the dichloromethane, but unfortunately Blue and Red both have timing loops.
Yeah.
I
think Red is taking advantage of while Blue's constructing. Red has nothing better to do, so it globs all the inputs together to be fast later for Blue to just grab them all and shove them into the swappers.
So Red's timing loop, you can see on the left side. On the left side, there's it dips pretty far below. Blue's timing loop is it doesn't need to go all the way up to the second row before coming back down to the corner on the left side, and also it doesn't need to squiggle around in the middle of the reactor. But other than that, it's pretty efficient use of both Waldos.
Yeah, it's also worth pointing out there's this alternating or partial 4/6 loop that both Red and Blue do over the psi output zone. And that's very efficient because a lot of the time it does a for loop, and then when it needs to push the stick over, all it has to do is move 2 extra cycles over. So that's a very efficient output loop, which makes the solution a lot faster, even with the Waldos having to do a bit of traveling around to different locations.
Well, let's go watch it go a little faster. And away we go.
Yeah, I like that input zone dichloroethane construction.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Just shove them together. Carry them all at once.
This gives anningmay a nice little edge over previous solution with 738 cycles, giving anningmay 15th place at 7.392 points. Here we go. Next up is gggol solution at number 14. This is one of the more unique solutions in the whole event. So let's go take a look at it.
So we've seen one solution before that had 3 swappers in the output zone, but not like this. This is a very interesting approach that uses, I think Rexkix described it as like pistons. So if we let it run, you can see what blue's doing over there. It's very, very fun to look at.
Indeed. My first reaction to looking at this solution was, those are some very interesting long lines you have there in blue. It reminded me of a 2017 tournament, or no, not 2017, 2018 tournament in Scientific Binary where I made a 4-bit counter. And it had a lot of blue lines going up and down. It was very interesting.
But yeah, he does grab 2 atoms on every dip down and back up. Dipstick, I was referring to them in my head.
It's a very unique way of making your outputs for sure. With blue making most of each output with doubling back to reuse a grab per each swapper, and red programming the needed swaps.
Yeah, it's actually reasonably efficient because he does 2 atoms at a time on each line. Yeah, it's not losing too many cycles.
It's really cool, but unfortunately, it's slow because of the input processing. Red spends a lot of time just processing the inputs and doesn't really help blue. It doesn't help blue very much with making the outputs, though.
Yeah, it doesn't have time to run over to the output zone. It's too busy doing inputs.
Right. We'll see later on really that many of the better performing solutions try really hard to not do much input processing.
Mm-hmm. That said, I think this is about as efficient as one would see a solution like this implemented. Mm-hmm. Because of, it's
very unique.
Yeah,
it's really fun.
But also, I have to call him out because this is unreadable because he used grab drops, and when he none of these actually had to be grab drops. It's just grabs on the swappers and drops on the bonders. But instead, it's a wall of grab drops I have to look at, and I'm like, what is going on here? At which points is it going to be grabbing? At which points is it going to be dropping?
I'll note that he made this one into a drop. This must have been an accident.
I think if it was a grab drop, he would have accidentally doubled back and grabbed it again, and he didn't want to do that. He actually only labels them as drops if it will mess it up.
Oh.
Whereas my philosophy is label everything as grab or drops unless you need it to be a grab drop. But anyway,
that's my philosophy.
I will confess that I follow the same philosophy as gggol. I tend to leave my grab drops unlabeled unless it's
even.
Yeah.
It's all fun and games until a commentator has to look at your solution on
Well.
All right, but yeah, very, very efficient implementation of that crazy idea.
Yeah, it's really interesting, fun to watch. That 695 cycles gave gggol at 14th place with 7.881 points for his score.
You may also remember gggol as the one who made the giant wall of iron in one of the extra solutions for the first puzzle. Gggol is like the resident lunatic here.
Really? Oh, he used to be
he made the giant
dude.
It
used to be pseudo dude.
It used to be pseudo dude, but nowadays it's gggol. He made the
I wish pseudo dude still
swastika
play.
Solution and the wall of iron solution.
Yeah, that huge big cradle of iron. That was really cool to watch. That was for the lead and the gold puzzle.
Yeah, thanks gggol for always giving us something quite a treat to look at.
Indeed. Okay, and we got JoJo here.
Alright, well, first thing, at the very beginning of the solution, you'll notice that blue will grab onto an alpha, rotate, and slam it right into all the swappers over the beta input. We will see this technique used again in the future. We'll see. Blue has a interestingly short loop. 4 cycles with a nitrogen 4
to 6 cycles, kind of ish.
Yeah. it definitely helps speed up. It's a 6-cycle loop with special casing for carbon and hydrogen, and it actually has it's similar to a double pump actually, where red
Both
will do
welders are
the
working on the outputs, yeah.
or no or where red will slam in the first input alpha and blue does the second one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Very efficient input handling with that slam approach, which is going to be seen later.
Yes.
And that allows both welders to work on the outputs, which saves a lot of time.
And with the swappers over completely covering the beta input, this means that you don't actually have to do any input processing for the beta at all.
Mm-hmm.
There's some interesting delay lines and clever use of sensors to make these outputs. And looking at the hydrogen tells you how each are used. By the way, we've taken quite a large jump from 14th to 13th place. The previous solution was at 695 cycles. We'll see that actually there's a lot of solutions that fall within 50 cycles of each other in this range of 610 and 560.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a nice jump over the previous solution with this really efficient input handling.
Okay. We'll let it run a little bit and watch it.
I like the synchronization of when they complete.
Yes, I do too. That looks...
If only the outputs had been timed exactly together.
And away we go. As mentioned already, this is JoJo got 610 cycles instead of the predecessor at 695. Big jump there. This gives JoJo 13th place with 8.934 points. Nice job, JoJo. Next solution is by Lazy Comet for 12th place. Let's go take a look at it. But before
First thing you'll notice is the highlighted symbol, which is a dead arrow. Gotta get the callouts in as always.
This one, you mean?
Yeah.
Let's just
once again, I think Lazy Comet avoided getting cost on the tiebreak, but
actually no, he did get cost on the tiebreak, but it was tiebreak contender. Both he and JoJo came in at 610 cycles. Lazy Combat had 84 symbols compared to 89 symbols, so now we got.
So that could have easily mattered.
That could have very easily mattered.
All right, careful there, Lazy Comet. You escaped this time. It's slightly ahead in symbols.
Let's go watch.
Yeah. So what's going on here?
First off, even before we go on, he's got 3 swappers on the input zone and only 1 in the output zone. One of the swappers isn't even over an input atom. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is a kind of combination of the double alpha approach that we've seen before, and the efficiency of putting the swappers over the beta input. So then he gets to do almost no time spent in the input zone, apart from when bonding a couple of alphas and shoving things downward. And then red can afford to send a loop over there to help out with the construction. But meanwhile, blue's doing something very efficient here, which is a for loop for the most part, building sticks, and then only needs to do a little jog out of its way to move the omega sticks downwards. And apart from that, the psi output just gets constructed naturally, which is great. Red only needs to do one assist.
So blue, if you actually go and look over at how many times blue grabs things, it's interesting that blue actually doesn't have any missed grabs. Like every time it's going through the loop, it's grabbing something. Mm-hmm. This, if you just looked at the for loop, you would probably rightly assume that, well, if he's bringing over 1 atom every 4 cycles, and there's
no missed grabs,
120 atoms that you need to make all your outputs, well, this should theoretically run in 480 cycles, right? But unfortunately, blue's special casing out of the nitrogen to make the explosive precursor actually does end up increasing the cycles to make it into a 60 cycle loop. and there's a 10 cycle latency on this solution. So it's a little unfortunate, but it is 5 symbols fewer than JoJo's solution. So congratulations on the tiebreak, even though you left that one arrow in.
Indeed. Let's go let this
Yeah, I do love that blue layout.
There is actually another symbol to be saved. With blue could have primed the flip flop before entering into the.
Oh no, it couldn't have, because it had to be over the drop then. To prime that flip flop, it would have to be going straight through. No.
No, not necessarily. I think you could.
Oh, can I go straight up? Yeah, you're right. You
yeah,
can
go straight up.
Unless, yeah, there's no sensor there.
But wouldn't that have made it slower?
One more symbol. Nope, it would have been the same initialization, yeah. Because it's 2 cycles away from that output, and if you just move it down to the bottom of the square and pointing straight upwards, in the middle.
Like there?
One tile to the left of this for the start. And then that flip flop gets primed. And it should jog upwards through that nitrogen. I think it'll be fine.
Like that? No.
Remove the middle arrow and put the rightmost arrow back. And then just turn the flip flop to point upwards. Yeah. And delete the arrow.
The arrow that points up. Yeah.
Yeah. So that should do it. Because it's always running from right to left when it hits that flip flop, so it shouldn't need an arrow.
Oh. Well, I'll be. Looks like you're right. Okay, well. Let that be a lesson to you, lazy comment. Let's let this go. 610 cycles. Earning lazy comment, 12th place. Nice job.
Yeah, that was very efficient for the output construction.
Yeah, this blue loop is
couldn't
really
have really lowered the cycles anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd have to completely change approaches to improve the cycles at all.
Okay, and next solution's coming right up. Next solution's by Biggie Mac at 11th place. Let's go take a look at this thing.
Yes. Big sticks. So, one of the things that we like to meme about in the SpaceChem community are big sticks, because they end up actually being really useful for storing atoms, and you can, grab anywhere along it to move a whole bunch of atoms at once. In this, it's unfortunate that Blue's recovery loop is that long. It's a little sad, but it's well
actually
timed.
Yeah. So the reason he did that is he's not doing the usual method of constructing 3 long sticks and attach, or like he's not doing 2 3 long sticks of the usual type. He's using HNO sticks at the bottom there.
Right.
And what that means is you don't have to call 2 alpha inputs to get what you need to build even 1 stick. So that means the input handling is really clean on Reddit. It only needs to do one input at a time. It doesn't have to do a bunch of, attaching 2 inputs together or anything like that. But the trade-off of that is now you've got, like, your dichloroethane looks great, but your explosive precursor is not built correctly. So then what he actually does is he transforms it into the other isomorphic rearrangement of it that we've seen before, with the 4 long stick and 2 atoms attached to it, kind of. So he just does a little jog over to these bonders and fixes the HNO sticks into the proper shape. Right. Which does cost a few cycles, but it does mean the input handling is really clean as a trade-off. So it's an interesting idea.
I do want to call out that, or just point out that the way that he actually makes the explosive precursor from the HNO sticks, it's actually we'll see that method actually used in some of the bonus solutions. It's a pretty elegant way of making the explosive precursor.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, obviously the solution is very fast because of that blue loop that is just a for loop, and all it has to do is spam that to 12 times to get the sticks built, while Red just assists a little bit with moving them over. Mm-hmm. So the only big cost it extols pays is all that fixing of the explosive precursor.
Well, let's go let it go to completion. 599 cycles as opposed to beating out the 610 before it. Gives Biggie Mac an 11th place. Top 10 is coming right up. 10th place is by Binky with this beautiful thing. Just go take a look at it. This is not, well, this one has 3 swappers in the input zone and 1 swapper in the output zone. And no sensor used at all.
Yeah, so the main design choice here is this loop with blue. It's an alternating 4 and 6 loop, and that has a really nice property that if you look at what it's doing here, it's building the 4-stick construction that we saw before, but doing it in a really efficient way where those 2 extra atoms at the top don't cost a bunch of extra handling. So that means that this is a really clean way of doing that isomorphism. And meanwhile, red actually has very little input handling to do because it has 3 swappers afforded to it, or very little. It doesn't spend too much time in it.
If you it's very curious. That's a 5-cycle loop. It alternates between 4 and 6, but it's essentially a 5-cycle loop. If you actually go and count how many times blue grabs, blue actually has time, right? Blue actually has 1 missed grabbed.
Oh, 1.
But red helps out by grabbing one of the atoms out of the swapper, so it cancels each other out. So if you just looked at it and just did that calculation, you have 5 times 12 times 10, which is 600 cycles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, red is actually so efficient on the inputs that it can afford to help out twice, one with a grab drop for the construction and one to move things upwards towards the output zone.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. That gives Binky 10th place with 597 cycles, just edging out Biggie Mac's 599.
Eking out the latency there, I think.
Indeed. Yeah. It's the latency.
Giving him a score of 9.357 points. Well done. 9th place is held by DariusOne, and here's his solution.
So DariusOne has another double input alpha solution, but this time he actually makes all of his he makes his dichloroethane first before he works on the explosive precursor. Both red and blue help with building, but it's mostly blue doing the building work. Red comes in and helps finish things and assists every now and then, but red does all of the input processing, while blue does building. There's some very interesting timing loops at the bottom for red, with all those flip-flops, and you can see the one on the very left is it's there to stall for 1 extra cycle, because it essentially is a wall running flip-flop with the redirection arrow into the wall.
Yeah, I like the way the psi output is constructed. This is another of the 4-stick constructions, but it's using a 4 loop on blue, and red just runs in and pulls it aside, and that happens to nicely mean that the atoms get attached correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we've seen lots of different ways in this tournament, or in this week, of making that 4 output construction, which is neat to see. It didn't even occur to me to try that. And the omega output is the more traditional 3 sticks bonded together.
And that gives DariusOne 586 cycle solution for 9.593 score. Nicely done. Let's go look at another one. Well, Zig here got our 8th place solution, so let's hear him explain his solution. Here we go.
All right, so this is following in the steps of the other 6 long stick solution by Biggie, and what I do is I use a 4 loop on blue that does its own shuffling over using a grab drop. So after it completes the 6 stick, it'll move it over itself with 1 empty loop where it isn't grabbing. So that loses a bit of time because it's every once in a while it's doing a grab and a drop over instead of actually handling any input swaps. Red has to do a bunch of really finicky timing just to get the inputs handled, and has only time for a little bit of assistance on the outputs with moving the ONO or sorry, the HNH downward toward the omega output zone, and then handling some bond timings. But yeah, what makes the solution fast is that blue is just, for the most part, just spends its time in a for loop and only misses 2 or 3, I actually forget, loops here where it is doing shuffling instead of construction. But yeah, trying to get red's timing correct was hell and meant that reworking the solution was very difficult, and this is probably not as optimized as it could be. If red could find more time to assist blue, then that would help a lot.
Oh, that's right. Just wondering how you got the double bond on the output right there.
Yeah, there was some red assistance from red for the double bond, and afterwards there had to be some awkward shuffling with bonder priority to avoid accidentally bonding the chlorine to the carbon too much or something like that.
Interesting. Okay. And Zig here gets 568 cycles instead of 586. There's a tongue twister for you. For 9.938 points. Nice job, Zig. The number 7 solution is by Dariush, and here we go. Let's go take a look at it.
Right. So Dariush has another big stick solution, but just ever so slightly better implemented, cutting 7 cycles on Zig. It's the equivalent of 2 missed grabs on his if you count his cycles and compare it to the theoretical, but his latency just happened to be better.
So he's basically doing the same thing I am, except that instead of like doing it implicitly with the grab drop on blue for shuffling things over, he uses that conditional output loop, which and has red assist more. Because the difference really is that red is handled way better here and has time to assist blue a lot more with the shuffling, and therefore blue doesn't need to waste loops doing that and can actually help with the output loop, which saves a lot of latency.
Another thing to note is we've gotten to 7th place, and this is actually the other end of the 50 cycle range that I was talking about earlier, from 610 to 560.
Okay. And 561 cycles. Dariush gets 7th place with 10.127 points. Number 6 place is by Sir. Sir is our current tournament leader, the man to beat. Here, let's see how he did his solution.
All right, so we now jump 20 cycles down with some very interesting double input alpha construction. Blue and red take turns constructing half of each output in an 8-cycle loop that each moves 2 atoms across the gap each time. If you kind of are keeping track of it, that actually is pretty much the equivalent of having one Waldo doing a constant 4-cycle loop.
So it's comparable to the other solutions, but it is a bit more efficient with how it swaps the jobs here.
Yes. It is a very nice solution, but you can see that red has a 2-cycle extra loop jutting out to the right side. While blue also has some extra loop space at the bottom, actually, because he doesn't have to go back to the bottom second row.
I guess that was at different points in the solution, so they couldn't merge.
Right. You can see that there's still some like areas where theoretically, if you could, tighten these loops up somehow, you could theoretically get the solution to be another 20 cycles or so faster.
Mm-hmm. But blue's construction loop is so large it has to go around it, I think.
Yeah, and by then you're kind of going to the field of theory and not really practice, which is always
Yeah, I really like the way he constructed with the grabbing 2 atoms in one loop to make the sticks, 2 separate sticks, in fact, at a time. And that way he doesn't have to shuffle he doesn't have to move anything from one output zone to the other like me and Darius H did. So that is actually saves a bit of time too. They're just
Well,
both already in their right output zones, which is nice to see.
and Sir gets 541 cycles for this solution for 10.530 points. Oof. Nice job, sir. Okay, fifth place is taken by Andy. Andy has this solution. Let's go take a look at it.
So the really efficient thing here is Blue's output loop. So the other solutions had to do a few jogs to help move sticks over. Blue does it itself, and they're both for loops. If you look at whenever it has that carbon sensor going, it does another for loop. The trade-off here is that in order to move the stick upwards at the right time, it can't have a bond command. So red assists with all the bonds, but blue actually can fit in a swap some of the time. So it's not too bad. But red has to be very, very efficient with how it handles the timing of the inputs while also assisting blue with all the swaps and bonds.
Indeed.
But he found a way to do it, which is impressive.
So blue here is a pure for loop, but this time he only has one missed grab instead of two. So this lowers the theoretical cycle count to 520 instead of 560. Very nice. Red, of course, does all of the programming, as Zig said, but it also involves all of the swap programming to make sure that blue picks up the right atom at the right time.
Okay. And let's watch it a few more times.
I like the two sensors right next to each other. Just so that red can happen to have a carbon over that spot at the right time to tell blue what to do.
And this gives Andy a 520 cycle solution, significantly better than the 541 that preceded it, giving him 10.974, almost at the full 12 points. Nice job, Andy.
Yeah, there's a good spread across the top 10 solutions aren't just all clustered in the same 10 cycle range, you know. So it's interesting to see there's so many different approaches, and they all have distinct jumps.
That's what always impresses me about this game is how different solutions can be. Just we have 30 solvers here, and they're all coming up with totally different ideas this time. Nicely done. Number 4 solution is taken by Gigs. Let's go take a look at it.
Right, so remember that input alpha rotate and slam all into the beta swappers? Well, we see that once again. And yes, the message at the top says, no sensors, no sinks. Cool, but shame you couldn't do it with no swappers. Yeah, so this time both blue and red help with construction. Blue actually has a 50 cycle loop, red has a 25 cycle loop. So that's how parity is conserved here, even though blue doesn't have any wall flip flop or sync or rotates. It's because red runs twice for every time blue runs. It looks as though that red is already as tight as can be, and that's the limiting Waldo, because blue looks like it has some delay lines, such as on the left side. It doesn't have to go all the way to the 4th column. Surprised that blue uses flip-flops for everything, though.
Yeah, I guess it just worked out that he happened to need it to do it every time. But yeah, the fact that red can just slam that input in is, again, saving a lot of time here. He doesn't need to worry about getting both the alpha inputs at once to do the construction. So anytime he can do that, it just means that doesn't need to be a dedicated Waldo constantly handling the inputs. And that saves a lot of time here. So we have yet another 20 cycle jump from the previous solution.
Yeah.
Which has been 4 or 5 of those in a row.
Nice job, Gigs. 500 cycles. 11.430 points. Wow, we're getting up to that perfect 12 soon. Number 3 solution is by brookieoz, and brookieoz is here to explain it. So here we go, Brookie.
Indeed, we have yet another input alpha grab, rotate, slam into beta swappers.
Yeah, this is in fact a different solution from the previous one.
It is different,
but they have a very similar layout.
Yeah, but instead of blue doing two like alternating like between a 24 and 26 path, or giving it a 50 overall path. Here, both red and blue actually have 50 cycle or 25 cycle loops. So
yeah, blues are just a lot cleaner here, right?
Blue makes most of the top input and helps out with the bottom input. I just split. I have red help out with two out of the 6 atoms that are required to move over.
But yeah, you won the tiebreak by how many symbols?
Quite a few, actually.
Yeah.
So Giggs had an 82, but
and not counting the 11 symbols he spent spelling no sense.
Right.
No
so
sync.
if you get rid of that, I think it goes down to like 72 or like 71 or so. I'm not completely sure.
We're a solid 12 symbols saved here.
Yeah. It ends up actually that this is actually the lowest symbol solution that anyone submitted for a non-extra, non-bonus solution.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah.
I also find it funny that you saved that one symbol by having blue do the alpha input for red, because that way red doesn't have to like merge lines early before the corner.
Mm-hmm. that was actually my very last symbol save. I originally had red do input alpha, and it was at a 500-/1/60. Mm-hmm. And I was saying in the Zachtronics Discord that I have a solution where both the cycles and symbols are multiples of 10. And then I found out this one simple save, so unfortunately that didn't end up being true for the very last revision.
I bet his symbol count is 30. Joking.
Anyhow, that's...
Yeah, shame, Giggs, that you couldn't find a way to output one cycle earlier.
Yeah, if either of you had won the latency at all, it would have been...
not a shame. It's a good thing that the commentary on Gig Solution didn't cost him...
Yeah, that's right. It's actually better that he wasn't off by, within 11 symbols.
Certainly true. So this is Rookie's 500 cycle solution for third place. Now let's take a look at number 2. The number 2 solution is by Noeuchar. And let's go take a look at it.
So this is a bit similar to Sir's solution, where there's an 8 loop in the output zone that is grabbing 2 atoms in a row. And that means that the output construction is, again, basically a for loop. But the Waldos swap jobs halfway through so that they can each construct a separate output.
Right.
More specifically, feed in different inputs, which is where they differ a lot.
It ends up being actually really efficient.
The time normally spent on dead loops and other solutions is instead spent on swapping which side the Waldos are working on here.
Right. Because it is a double input alpha solution, and usually those save time because you don't have to go over to the alpha input nearly as often, because you can just have one Waldo do it, and you can have one Waldo on the output side doing all of the construction all the time. But if you actually look here, blue actually also goes over and... or red actually does go over to process the rest of the alpha. So both Waldos actually end up doing some input processing. So you'd think that this would kind of, decrease the effectiveness of doing a double input alpha solution. But it ends up being that because of the efficient 8 cycle loop, that it actually kind of counteracts, because it's really, really well timed and really well fit.
Yeah, so they exactly, I think almost exactly, one starts doing the output construction again as soon as the other one leaves, so they don't actually lose any time there. It's a perfect transition, basically.
Right. So this actually ends up being a 49 cycle loop for both outputs. Mm-hmm. So very nicely done.
Finally breaking into the sub 500s. Oh, and we need to swap the sidebar.
Oh no!
Oh well, it's fine.
There we go.
Just quietly do it halfway through the video and cut this little bit out. Yeah, very, very efficient handling. So now we're into the 49 to 48 cycle loops.
Sorry about that, Noeuchar. Your sidebar is now correct. 491 cycles for this solution for second place, and we only have one more place to go. Top solution this week is by ToughThought. He's won it once before with the first week, I believe.
Yeah, he's been dominating the cycles puzzles here.
Yeah, indeed. So let's go take a look at ToughThought's solution here.
All right, so ToughThought. First of all, congratulations on submitting the fastest solution to this week. You'll notice that ToughThought actually has a 8-cycle loop and has a similar thing where he actually visits the swapper twice. So even though it is an 8-cycle loop, he actually effectively transports one atom over every 4 cycles. Red does have one missed drop or one missed grab, but blue replaces it. So it's effectively having one atom go over every 4 cycles. So this gives him a minimum theoretical cycle count of 480. Mm-hmm. Blue has 2 rotates, which fixes parity, thus allowing for a 48 cycle loop. One thing that is curious to me is that he actually decided to use red for grabbing the swapper instead of blue. This means that you have to swap before you grab onto the red, because you can't swap with blue and then grab with red on the same cycle.
It depends. If there's already something there, you can do it, but if it's empty, then you can't. Yeah.
That is true. You don't have to if you can find a way to where red is holding on to it.
I don't know if he ever does. I think he might have done it there. He was holding something and swapped it as he was grabbing it on the oxygen cycle. Right next one, I think. Chlorine. Here it is. Oh, never mind. He doesn't. No, it always manages to be just before. So.
So could we swap Waldo colors if we wanted to?
No, you actually
I suspect there's a reason not. Probably blue's output timing is right at the same drop, right?
It's because red has. There's a cycle where red swaps and blue grabs on the exact same cycle right there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So there was actually deliberately for that reason, but for the assisted one instead of the main ones.
I think so.
Gotcha.
Nice.
Yeah, but this is all the benefits of those 4 loops we saw before, but with the advantage of not having to make a giant stick to get things into the right output zones. They're just already there because this figure 8 is a very clever design. So they're putting the sticks directly into the output zones they need to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And gets the swap and the bond without having to have blue do a lot of assistance on those fronts. So blue's just having a leisurely time with its timing here.
And we'll let it run to completion at this pace, because, well, not for one solution. And there it is, 484 cycles instead of 491 before it. That's a nice jump. Nice job, ToughThought. You're our winner this week.
Yeah, congratulations. Or someone's going to have to stop ToughThought on these cycles puzzles. It's he's starting to look unstoppable.
Impressive. But there's more. There's more non-scoring solutions. Let's go take a look at them. Now, all of these non-scoring solutions are going to be swap hammer solutions. That means one of the Waldos is going to hammer on a swap, running straight into the wall, swapping for every single cycle. So let's go.
This was a bit of a meme in the Discord. I think people were like, "Oh, can this be done with a swap hammer?" And it's like, well, it'll be really annoying, but yeah, it can be done.
Yeah, well, everything's going to be blinking around all the time. So here's Binky's solution.
So, one of the common things that you'll end up seeing in the swap hammers is that they'll make use of a loop where they will grab something out of the swappers and then make
It has to
sticks
time
with
it to
them.
the right. It has to time it to the right modularity of 2 to be able to fit
there's
on
a
the poppers
lot
as
of
they're flashing.
there's a lot of timing, like wow.
Mod 1 or Mod 2 timing.
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny.
Well, there always has to be something that makes it go off by 1, because if it's always mod 2, you're going to get it at exactly the same point.
Yeah, like that's a dead rotate, right? It's just maybe it actually gets used. I don't know. Is it just for the timing?
I think it's a dead rotate.
It was used for timing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's like there's 3 ways for you to, if you're looping through the
Middle of the reactor.
If you're looping through, if you're trying to like get 3 or 4 atoms out of the swappers in a single loop, you have to either use one of 3 things. One is you either use a rotate to add a cycle, so you break the parity. The other one is you use a wall flip-flop to break the parity, or you use an extra swap command to make it swap twice, so that it's not like, it's an exercise in, it's essentially a big exercise in timing. Yeah, like blue there doubling back over that flip-flop there just for 2 extra cycles.
I like how blue uses almost every cell of the reactor except for red cells. Like, it's just like, I won't interfere with you. Like, it just does a little jog around red as if it's an obstacle.
I like that it's always in the swappers except at the very end. They're always quite busy.
Indeed.
Like right here, they just sit, all 4 of them. Anyhow, let's go run this to completion. This swap hammer solution runs at 2707 cycles, and it's beauty to watch. Thank you very much, Binky. The next swap hammer solution is by Brookie, and Brookie's going to explain it. Here we go, Brookie.
Right. So, I would like to showcase this one because this is actually the lowest symbol swap hammer solution submitted this week. So instead of doing like, unlike Binky's solution, who made like the molecules about like 2 atoms at a time, here I decided to essentially make my outputs half a molecule at a time, and here I use a 7-cycle loop to make sure that I cycle through all the swaps, grabbing 1 atom at a time. And I have some sensors to special case out when it detects to make a stick to break out of the loop, and flip-flops to output.
Very nice.
Nice.
I like the Omega output construction. It's unique.
Yes.
It's actually, I guess, the same as that one where the big stick got made and then it fixed it at the end.
Yes. So, Biggie Mac's solution did something similar. Not exactly the same, but similar.
Yeah, kind of janky, dragging one piece over the other to fix it.
Let's go watch it. Right here.
And Blue's got
there's some bonder priority stuff going on there.
And Blue's got some squiggles going on in its path. It's nice.
Nice. Well, the best part about it is a swap hammer. It runs at 2435 cycles, but that's not important. That's a nice swap hammer solution. Next swap hammer solutions by Brookie again. This one I'll let Brookie talk about. Here we go, Brookie.
So I wanted to quickly show that it is actually possible to do this using red to grab things. So the special case here is with red grabbing out of the swap, you actually have to prime the swapper before you can get anything out of it. Because otherwise you would pass over the swap and grab nothing, or you would swap away the atom before you could actually grab it. So this solution is essentially the same as my previous one, with a whole bunch of extra timing loops to make sure that it doesn't crash and to preserve 1 atom in the swappers at all times to make
So
sure
that's why
it
you have
still
that-
functions.
You have that funny initialization where you just grab a beta and dispose of the chlorine and just use the hydrogen to prime the swappers.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I was wondering what that was doing there. Nice. Okay, let's.
Meme solution.
And this runs a similar 2410 cycles. Thank you, Brookie. Next, Swap Hammer Solutions by Gigs. Let's go take a look at it.
What on earth is all this blue spaghetti? Oh my gosh.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so it's another swap hammer solution, but there's a lot of logic that goes on in here. There's running Waldos in multiple locations, and
Sensors everywhere. Like,
lots
yeah,
of input processing as well.
if anyone claims they can sight read this, I just straight up won't believe them.
Well,
But somehow he gets it all done, and in a very easy to understand way, obviously.
obviously.
His logic is actually very very interesting because he actually makes a third of the explosive precursor before he goes back to finish.
Just needed to get the nitrogen oxygen out of the way, I guess, to clear space in the tunnel, in the 4 long tunnel.
I don't know. It's very interesting.
If you have too many atoms in the swappers, I guess they just get in the way, right?
I can't say. I feel like for my experience of making the swap hammers has been mostly that you have to essentially alternate between putting atoms into the tunnels and grabbing them out of them again. But
yeah,
the way that, or the simplest way to do it would be to make like a stick of 3 for the dichloromethane and then a stick of 3 for the explosive precursor first. But with the way that Gigs does it, he doesn't split it evenly, which is kind of impressive.
So many hydrogen sensors, my god. Like a little Christmas set of Christmas lights.
Indeed.
Okay,
All right.
well, that's.
Very nice. How much does this come in at?
This comes in at 2390 cycles, 79 symbols. Nice job, Gigs. Our last swap hammer solutions by Andy, and here it is. Let's go take a look at it. Well, I'll point out something first. He has no wall hanging flip-flops to slow things down. He gets by instead with swap in his tight loop.
And yeah, no rotates, so
Yeah.
it seems he was going for cycles here. He didn't bother doing any wall stall flip-flops to save an arrow.
Indeed.
And where we go.
Yeah, it's pretty compact solution. He doesn't use like an awful lot of space considering how much there is to be done in a swap hammer solution.
Yeah. So Andy's actually has some very interesting methods when he's actually doing his swap hammer, in that he doesn't do the like half an input each time. He actually stores the hydrogen or the nitrogen oxygen parts for the explosive precursor over the alpha input area.
Just blobs them all together.
Yep.
And he has these bonders here. What are they doing?
That's for the blobbing all the inputs together that he doesn't want to currently be using.
Okay.
So that he can only focus on the ones that he needs for the current half, I guess.
Oh, I see. Got it. Oh, I see. Nice. And we'll let it run out.
So fun watching single Waldo solutions because they're just like, going crazy, running around everywhere. having to do so much everything by themselves.
And this one clocks in at 15 cycles, which is significantly better than Gig's previous 2280. This is by far and away our fastest swap hammer solution. Thank you very much, Andy. That was fun to watch. Now we've got the round 3A results. So in 10th place we had Binky. 9th place we had DariusOne. Zig here brought us up 8th place. Dariush had 7th place. Sir in 6th. Andy in 5th. Gigs in 4th place. brookieoz right here has 3rd place. Noeuchar has 2nd place. And ToughThought bringing up the top place at 1st place. Nice job, ToughThought.
Congrats to everyone on the really interesting set of solutions we saw this time.
Yeah.
Lots of variants.
Indeed.
Yeah.
There's also a nice little current of like similar ideas that get reused and combined in interesting ways. Just all similar ways of handling inputs and outputs.
Now, as we mentioned, there is a round 3B, and we'll get those results and the full round 3 results and our current standings all in the next video. So stay tuned for that one. And thank you all for watching. This has been Rexkix with brookieoz and Zig doing our commentary for Week 3A in the 2020 SpaceChem tournament. Thanks, everybody. RP0 has 1308 cycles. Let's go take a look at it first.
Does he have a double input?
Yeah, it looks like he's doing the double alpha input that a lot of people did, I assume.
I don't know.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
What are those bonders for?
I think that might be for the beta.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. That's strange.
He's doing constructing sticks, I assume, because he's got his bonders ranged in a 3. Oh, no, he's doing this. Oh, he's doing something asymmetrical. He's got a spine on. Yeah, he's doing the top one. How?
Wait, what? He never uses those. He never uses the bonders over the alpha.
Really? Oh
yeah.
my god! Get me out of here!
We just got debated so hard.
I'm trying to read the solution, and he's throwing bonders in that are doing nothing.